Captain Reed stood at the command center of his mighty vessel, the Starweaver, gazing at the blue planet through the main viewport. His forefingers drummed against the polished surface of his control panel, a habit he had picked up over his 3 centuries of space trading. The Earth, as its inhabitants called it, hung like a jewel in the darkness of space, wrapped in swirling white clouds and vast blue oceans. "Such a primitive world," he muttered, his scaled skin reflecting the soft light of the ship's interior. The Starweaver was the pride of his career, built with the legendary adamantine alloy, a material that had withstood the harshest environments across 12 galaxies. Its silvery hull could resist extreme temperatures, cosmic radiation, and even the most corrosive atmospheres known to spacefaring civilizations. The ship's AI chimed in, its voice calm and measured. "Captain, I detect unusual atmospheric compositions in the planet below. Recommended course of action: full atmospheric analysis before descent." Reed waved his hand dismissively. "Skip it. I've seen the reports. Just another oxygen-nitrogen mix with some trace elements. Nothing the Starweaver can't handle." He had visited thousands of planets, and after a while, they all started to look the same. His ship's adamantine hull could withstand the plasma storms of the Crab Nebula. A simple planetary atmosphere posed no threat. As he initiated the descent sequence, a message flashed across his screen. It was from the planet's primitive space control center. "Unknown vessel. This is Earth Space Control. Please maintain orbit for atmospheric entry clearance and safety protocols." Reed chuckled. Safety protocols? From a species that had barely reached their own moon. He sent back a brief response. "Acknowledged, Earth Control. However, my vessel exceeds your safety requirements. Beginning descent." The Starweaver's engines hummed as they pushed against Earth's gravitational pull. Reed relaxed in his command chair, already thinking about the valuable trade goods he could acquire from this backwater world. He had heard rumors, of course, whispers in spaceports about Earth being classified as a death world by some traders. But he had dismissed these as exaggerations from less experienced spacers. The first layer of atmosphere embraced his ship, and Reed watched the readings with casual interest. Temperature nominal. Hull integrity at 100%. Everything precisely as he had expected. Then something unusual caught his eye. The external sensors were showing increased molecular activity around the hull. Reed sat up straighter, his antenna twitching slightly. "Computer, analyze hull surface activity." Warning, the AI responded immediately. "Unknown chemical reaction detected on outer hull layer. Molecular bonds showing stress patterns outside normal parameters." "Impossible," Reed muttered, his fingers flying over the control panel. The adamantine alloy was impervious to chemical deterioration. He had personally flown through acid clouds that could dissolve standard spacecraft in seconds. More warning lights began to flash across his console. The readings made no sense. The simple oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere was somehow creating a reaction he had never seen before. The ship's external cameras showed microscopic patterns appearing on the hull's surface, like frost spreading across glass. "Temperature increasing at hull contact points," the AI announced. "Detecting unprecedented chemical reaction. Captain, recommend immediate abort of descent." Reed's pride battled with his growing concern. The Starweaver had cost him a fortune, its adamantine hull alone worth more than most planets' annual economic output. Yet here he was, watching impossible readings from what should have been a routine atmospheric entry. Another message flashed from Earth Space Control. "Unknown vessel, our sensors detect unusual heat signatures from your hull. Please engage emergency protocols and return to orbit immediately. Rescue teams are on standby." Reed's antenna drooped slightly. Rescue teams. From Earth. The very notion was absurd. Yet as more warning lights blazed across his console and the first integrity alerts began to sound, he realized that perhaps he should have heeded the initial warnings. Perhaps there was more to this death world than he had been willing to believe. Looking at the blue planet through his viewport, Reed began to understand that he might have made a terrible mistake. The Starweaver continued its descent through Earth's atmosphere, and Captain Reed watched with growing horror as his ship's status reports grew worse by the second. The supposedly indestructible adamantine hull was now showing visible signs of stress, something he had never witnessed in his centuries of space travel. Hull integrity at 92% and dropping, the ship's AI announced, its usual calm voice now carrying a note of urgency. Unknown atmospheric elements are creating a cascading molecular reaction in the outer layer. Reed's hands moved frantically across the control panel, activating additional shields and protective measures. The ship's external cameras showed a disturbing sight. The sleek silver surface of the Starweaver was developing a strange, rainbow-like sheen, similar to oil on water. "This is impossible," he muttered, his antenna twitching nervously. "Computer, full analysis of atmospheric composition." The results that scrolled across his screen made his eyes widen. The Earth's atmosphere wasn't just a simple oxygen-nitrogen mix as he had assumed. It contained dozens of trace elements and compounds, all interacting in ways his ship's systems had never encountered before. The water vapor, when combined with various pollutants and natural compounds, was creating something entirely new. Another message from Earth Space Control flashed on his screen. "Unknown vessel, our atmospheric defense systems detect critical deterioration in your hull structure. Emergency protocol activation required. Please respond." Reed gritted his teeth. His pride was screaming at him to ignore these primitives, but the evidence before his eyes was undeniable. The Starweaver's hull, the same hull that had survived the acid storms of the gas giant colonies, was failing. Temperature in outer hull sections reaching critical levels, the AI warned. Detecting microscopic breaches in sectors 7 through 12. Secondary containment holding but showing similar degradation patterns. Through the viewport, Reed could now see the outer layer of his ship literally changing color. The proud silver surface was turning a sickly green-brown, like ancient metal left to rust. But this wasn't rust. This was something far worse. "Computer, engage emergency ascent protocols." Reed commanded, finally accepting that retreat might be his only option. But the response from his AI made his blood run cold. Unable to comply. Engine housing showing signs of structural weakness. Increased thrust might compromise hull integrity completely. The ship shuddered, and warning alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Reed watched in disbelief as the material he had paid a fortune for, the legendary adamantine alloy, continued to degrade before his eyes. Earth Space Control's next message was more urgent. "Unknown vessel, we are tracking rapidly expanding structural damage to your craft. Emergency rescue teams are launching. Maintain current position if possible. Do not attempt to power up your engines." Reed's antenna drooped in resignation as he realized these primitives might understand something he didn't. The external cameras showed small Earth vessels approaching, their hulls seemingly unaffected by the same atmosphere that was eating through his ship. How? He wondered aloud, watching the Earth ships maneuver confidently through the corrosive atmosphere. How are their vessels surviving? The answer came from a detailed scan of the approaching rescue ships. Their hulls were made of materials that seemed absurdly simple compared to his adamantine alloy, yet they were perfectly adapted to handle Earth's unique atmospheric cocktail. Another violent shudder ran through the ship, and new warnings flashed across his screen. The structural damage was spreading faster now, and Reed could hear the unsettling sound of his mighty vessel groaning under the strain. Hull integrity at 76% and falling, the AI reported. Critical failure predicted within the next 15 minutes unless immediate action is taken. Reed looked at the approaching Earth vessels, his pride finally crumbling completely. These humans, whom he had dismissed as backward primitives, had mastered something his advanced civilization had never even considered: the ability to survive in an atmosphere so corrosive it could melt the strongest known material in the galaxy. As his ship continued to deteriorate around him, Captain Reed reached for his communications panel. It was time to swallow his pride and accept help from the very species he had underestimated so badly. The situation aboard the Starweaver had gone from bad to catastrophic. Captain Reed stood in his command center, watching through the viewport as pieces of his ship's outer hull literally peeled away like old paint, dissolving into the Earth's atmosphere. Hull integrity now at 54% and declining rapidly. The ship's AI reported. Multiple breaches detected in the cargo holds. Inner hull showing signs of similar degradation patterns. A loud crack echoed through the ship, making Reed's antenna stand straight up in alarm. The viewing screen showed a horrifying sight. A long, jagged split had appeared along the ship's main body, glowing an angry orange as Earth's atmosphere worked its way deeper into the vessel's structure. Emergency containment fields failing in sections 3 through 8, the AI continued. Atmosphere breach imminent. All crew must proceed to emergency survival pods immediately. Reed's crew of 12, all experienced space travelers, rushed to follow emergency protocols. Through the internal cameras, he watched them sealing themselves into their protective suits, their movements showing barely controlled panic. "Captain," his first officer called through the comm system, "the cargo hold doors are starting to buckle. We're losing millions in trade goods." But Reed barely heard him. His attention was fixed on the readings from the ship's sensors. The temperature inside the hull was rising to dangerous levels as Earth's atmosphere created some kind of chemical reaction he had never seen before. The adamantine alloy wasn't just melting, it was being transformed at a molecular level. Another violent shudder rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed red across every console as more systems began to fail. The proud Starweaver, once the most advanced trading vessel in 12 galaxies, was literally falling apart around them. "Inner hull breach detected," the AI announced. Atmospheric contamination spreading to internal systems. Life support compromised in lower decks. Through the growing gaps in his ship's structure, Reed could see the Earth rescue vessels approaching. Their simple but effective ships moved smoothly through the same atmosphere that was destroying his advanced vessel. He watched in amazement as they positioned themselves around the Starweaver, seemingly untroubled by the conditions that were proving fatal to his ship. "This is Earth Rescue Team Alpha," a human voice crackled through his communication system. "We're preparing to attach emergency atmospheric shields around your vessel. Please maintain position and prepare for emergency evacuation." Reed pressed a button on his command chair. "Acknowledged, Earth Rescue." "But how? How are your ships surviving this?" There was a slight pause before the human responded. "Our ships are built for Earth conditions, Captain. We've had centuries to adapt our technology to handle our atmosphere. Now, please focus on evacuation procedures. Your ship's structure is failing faster than we anticipated." As if to emphasize the human's words, another series of creaks and groans echoed through the ship. Reed watched in horror as his main viewport began to cloud over, tiny cracks spreading across its surface like a spider's web. "Captain," his engineering chief called in panic. "The engine core is showing signs of instability. If this continues, we could have a complete systems failure." Reed felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. A systems failure could trigger a chain reaction in the engine core, potentially destroying not just his ship but endangering the Earth rescue teams as well. "All crew, abandon ship," Reed commanded, his voice steady despite his fear. "Proceed to emergency pods immediately. This is not a drill." As his crew scrambled to evacuate, Reed initiated the ship's final emergency protocols. Through the deteriorating viewport, he could see the human rescue ships extending some kind of energy field around the Starweaver, creating a protective bubble that seemed to slow the destructive process. "Final warning," the ship's AI announced, its voice beginning to distort. "Critical system failure imminent. Command center atmosphere breach in 3 minutes." Reed took one last look at his dying ship's controls before heading for his own escape pod. The Starweaver had been his pride and joy, the pinnacle of his species' technology. Now it was being destroyed by what he had dismissed as a primitive planet's atmosphere. As he sealed himself into his escape pod, Reed realized that perhaps his civilization had a lot to learn from these humans who had mastered survival in such a hostile environment. Commander Jack Thompson of Earth Space Defense watched through his ship's reinforced viewport as the alien vessel continued to disintegrate. The supposedly indestructible ship was now surrounded by a cloud of its own dissolving hull material, creating an eerie light show in the afternoon sky. "All teams in position," reported his second-in-command, Officer Miller. "Atmospheric shields are holding at 100% efficiency." Their rescue ship, the Defender, was built using Earth's latest corrosion-resistant materials, simple but incredibly effective against their planet's harsh atmosphere. "Begin rescue sequence," Thompson ordered, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. "Team Alpha, prepare for emergency pod retrieval. Team Beta, maintain shield coverage around the alien vessel." Through their specialized sensors, they could see the alien crew's escape pods launching from various points of the failing ship. Each pod glowed with some kind of advanced energy field, but even these were showing signs of deterioration in Earth's atmosphere. "Sir," called out their science officer, "scans show their pod shielding won't last more than 10 minutes in our atmosphere. We need to move fast." Thompson nodded, pressing the ship-wide communication button. "All teams, this is a time-critical rescue. Remember your training. These beings have never experienced Earth atmospheric conditions. Treat all survivors as potential medical emergencies." The Defender's retrieval systems sprang into action. Magnetic grapples shot out, surrounded by their own atmospheric shields, catching the alien escape pods one by one and pulling them into the safety of the ship's specially designed hangar bay. "First pod secured," reported Miller. "Medical team standing by." "Sir, you might want to see this." Thompson moved to the monitoring station. The camera feeds showed the alien pod's outer shell literally bubbling, its advanced materials no match for Earth's corrosive atmosphere. Even as they watched, parts of the pod's surface began to flake away. "Get them out of there, now," Thompson ordered. The rescue teams moved in with practiced efficiency, using their specialized equipment to cut through the pod's hull. Inside, they found the alien crew members in their protective suits, looking shaken but alive. More pods were retrieved, each showing the same deterioration pattern. The aliens' technology, despite its apparent advancement, was failing spectacularly against Earth's natural defenses. "Commander," called out the radar operator, "the alien ship's core is becoming unstable. Energy readings are off the charts." Thompson turned to watch the main screen. The Starweaver was now barely recognizable, its once proud shape twisted and corroded. Streams of molten metal floated off into the atmosphere, disintegrating into nothing. "Location of the ship's captain," Thompson demanded. "Last pod still attached to the vessel, sir." "Command center section." Thompson made a quick decision. "Miller, you have the bridge. I'm going out there myself." Minutes later, Thompson was in his personal rescue craft, designed specifically for Earth's challenging conditions. As he approached the dying alien ship, he could see the captain's pod struggling to launch, its mechanisms clearly damaged by the atmospheric exposure. "This is Commander Thompson to Alien Captain," he broadcast. "Your pod's launch system is failing. Stand by for emergency retrieval." Through the pod's viewport, Thompson could see the alien captain, a tall, scaled being with 4 fingers and antennae. The alien's eyes widened as Thompson's small craft approached, seemingly unbothered by the same conditions that had destroyed his mighty vessel. Using the rescue craft's specialized tools, Thompson managed to free the pod just as another section of the Starweaver's hull collapsed. He pulled the pod to safety, its surface already beginning to deteriorate. "All pods retrieved." Miller's voice came through the comm system. "Commander, the alien ship's core is reaching critical levels. Recommended safe distance is 20 kilometers." As Thompson piloted his craft back to the Defender, he watched in his rear viewers as the once mighty alien vessel finally gave up its fight against Earth's atmosphere. The Starweaver's remaining structure collapsed in on itself, its core containment failing in a spectacular but thankfully small explosion that was quickly absorbed by the atmosphere. Inside his rescue craft, Thompson couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and sympathy. These aliens had learned the hard way what every Earth ship designer knew. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the best, especially when dealing with humanity's surprisingly defensive homeworld. Inside the Defender's quarantine bay, Captain Reed watched in fascination as human medical teams worked with calm efficiency. His crew, all 13 of them, including himself, were being treated for what the humans called atmospheric stress exposure. The bay's walls were made of a simple but effective material that seemed completely immune to the corrosive effects that had destroyed his ship. "Please remain still, Captain," a human doctor instructed, passing a scanning device over his scaled skin. "We need to make sure you haven't absorbed any harmful compounds during the exposure." Reed could hardly believe the situation. Through the quarantine bay's window, he could see pieces of his destroyed ship being carefully collected by human recovery vessels. The Starweaver, worth more than some planets' entire economies, had been reduced to floating scrap in less than an hour. Commander Thompson entered the quarantine area, wearing what looked like a remarkably simple protective suit. "Captain Reed, I hope you and your crew are feeling better. We've managed to salvage some of your cargo, though I'm afraid most of it was lost." "The cargo doesn't matter," Reed replied, his antenna drooping. "I don't understand. Your ships, your equipment, they're all technologically simpler than ours. Yet they survive while our advanced materials failed. How is this possible?" Thompson pulled up a chair, maintaining the quarantine barrier between them. "It's quite simple, really. We evolved on Earth, and our technology evolved with us. Everything we build has to withstand our atmosphere's natural corrosiveness. Your ship's hull may be advanced, but it was never designed for Earth's specific conditions." A human scientist joined them, carrying a tablet showing analysis results. "Captain Reed, your ship's hull was amazing technology, but it had a critical weakness. Earth's unique combination of oxygen, nitrogen, water vapor, and various pollutants created a reaction your materials weren't prepared for. Our ships use specially treated alloys that work with these conditions rather than trying to resist them." Reed watched as they showed him detailed scans of his ship's destruction. The adamantine alloy had undergone a complete molecular breakdown when exposed to Earth's atmosphere. Yet the human's seemingly primitive materials remained perfectly intact. "Your rescue ships," Reed noted, looking at the recovery operation outside. "They're not fighting against the atmosphere at all, are they?" "Exactly," Thompson smiled. "We learned long ago that trying to build invincible ships was the wrong approach. Instead, we developed materials that can interact safely with our atmosphere. It's like swimming with the current instead of against it." The medical team finished their examination, giving Reed and his crew clearance to leave the quarantine area. As they were led to more comfortable quarters, Reed couldn't help but notice how every piece of human technology, while appearing simple, was perfectly adapted to their environment. "Commander," Reed asked as they walked, "my species has visited thousands of worlds, yet we've never encountered anything like this. Why hasn't anyone warned us about Earth's atmosphere?" Thompson chuckled. "Oh, there are warnings. Earth is classified as a death world by many spacefaring species. Most traders orbit our planet and use our space stations for commerce. You're not the first to learn this lesson the hard way, though you might have set a record for the most expensive ship lost to our atmosphere." Reed's antenna twitched in embarrassment. "I thought those death world classifications were exaggerated. I never imagined that a supposedly primitive planet could destroy your advanced technology." Thompson finished for him. "Earth has taught us to be humble, Captain. Nature always finds a way to remind us of our limitations." Looking out at the last fragments of his ship being collected, Reed felt a strange mix of humility and curiosity. These humans, despite their relatively young civilization, had mastered something his people had never even considered. They hadn't tried to conquer their harsh environment. They had adapted to work with it. "Commander Thompson," Reed said finally, I believe my people could learn a great deal from Earth. Would your scientists be willing to share their knowledge about atmospheric-resistant materials? Thompson smiled. Of course. That's another thing about humans, Captain. We're always happy to share what we've learned, especially if it helps prevent future accidents like this. Reed nodded, his antenna lifting slightly in hope. Perhaps this disaster would turn out to be a blessing in disguise, opening up new possibilities for both his people and humanity. 3 days after the destruction of his ship, Captain Reed sat in Earth Space Defense's main laboratory, watching in amazement as human scientists demonstrated their atmospheric protection technology. The simple genius of their solutions left him speechless. "Watch this," Dr. Peters, the lead scientist, said as she placed 2 metal plates in a testing chamber. One was made of Reed's prized adamantine alloy, salvaged from his ship's wreckage. The other was a dull gray piece of earth metal. "We'll expose both to a concentrated dose of our atmosphere." Through the chamber's viewport, Reed watched with his antenna twitching nervously. The adamantine plate, worth more than this entire laboratory, began to deteriorate almost immediately. Meanwhile, the earth metal remained completely unchanged. "I don't understand," Reed admitted, his scaled fingers touching the glass. "Our alloy can withstand the heat of a dying star. How can your atmosphere destroy it so easily?" Dr. Peters brought up a detailed molecular diagram on the main screen. "It's all about adaptation, Captain. Your metal fights against every atmospheric particle, trying to maintain its structure. Ours works with the atmosphere, creating a protective layer that actually gets stronger with exposure." Commander Thompson, who had been quietly observing, added, "It's like the difference between building a rigid wall to stop a river and creating channels to guide the water where you want it to go." The demonstration continued as Dr. Peters showed more examples of human ingenuity, simple but effective solutions that Reed's people had never considered. Their ships didn't just survive Earth's atmosphere, they used it to their advantage. "Here's something interesting," Dr. Peters said, pulling up data from the Starweaver's destruction. "Your ship's hull actually provided us with valuable research data. The way it failed taught us several new things about atmospheric interactions." Reed's antenna drooped slightly. "At least something good came from my mistake. But I still can't believe we never thought to study Earth's atmosphere more carefully. We just assumed our technology was superior." "That's a common mistake," Thompson replied kindly. "Many advanced species think that because they can travel between stars, they must know everything worth knowing. Earth has taught us humans to never make that assumption." A junior scientist rushed into the lab, carrying new test results. "Dr. Peters, you need to see this. The combination of earth metals with the salvaged adamantine alloy, it's creating something completely new." They all gathered around a testing chamber where the 2 materials had been combined. Instead of destroying each other, they had formed a new alloy that seemed to have the best properties of both. "Incredible," Dr. Peters breathed, studying the readings. "The strength of adamantine combined with our atmospheric adaptation properties. This could revolutionize space travel for both our species." Reed felt his spirits lifting for the first time since losing his ship. "You mean we could create vessels that are both super strong and capable of weathering harsh atmospheres?" "Exactly," Thompson nodded. "This is why we always share our findings with other species. Every disaster is an opportunity to learn and improve. Your loss might lead to a breakthrough in spacecraft design." The lab team quickly began running more tests, their excitement growing with each new discovery. Reed watched them work, amazed by their enthusiasm and openness to new ideas. His own people would have kept such discoveries secret, but these humans seemed eager to share everything they learned. "You know," Reed said thoughtfully, "I lost my ship coming to Earth, but I think I found something more valuable. The understanding that true advancement comes from working with nature, not against it." Dr. Peters smiled as she continued examining the new alloy. "That's the core of human engineering, Captain. We learned long ago that trying to overpower natural forces usually leads to failure. It's better to understand them and work with them." As Reed watched the humans excitedly discuss the possibilities of the new material, he realized that his costly mistake might have opened up a new chapter in interstellar relations. His people's technology combined with human ingenuity could create something greater than either civilization could achieve alone. Commander Thompson, Reed said, his antenna rising with renewed purpose, I believe this is the beginning of a very productive partnership between our peoples. Thompson nodded, looking at the successful test results. Indeed it is, Captain. Indeed it is. 1 month after the Starweaver's destruction, Captain Reed stood in Earth's main orbital station, watching as workers assembled the first prototype ship built with the new hybrid material. The vessel's hull gleamed with a unique blue-silver sheen, representing the successful merger of Earth and alien technology. Beautiful, isn't she? Commander Thompson said, joining Reed at the observation window. The first of her kind. A ship that can withstand both deep space and planetary atmospheres with equal effectiveness. Reed's antenna lifted with pride. Despite losing his prized vessel, he had gained something far more valuable. His detailed report about Earth's atmosphere and human engineering had caused a sensation back home. Now ships from his civilization were arriving daily, eager to trade and learn from humanity. The Council of Traders was shocked by my report, Reed said, watching the construction crews work. They couldn't believe that a primitive world had solved problems our best scientists struggled with for centuries. Now they're calling Earth's atmosphere the great teacher. Thompson laughed. Well, it certainly taught you an expensive lesson. Worth every credit, Reed replied good-naturedly. Thanks to that lesson, we've advanced our technology more in 1 month than in the previous decade. And Earth's economy is booming from the export of atmospheric-resistant materials. The station's main screen showed various news feeds. Earth's stock markets were reaching record highs as companies began mass-producing the new hybrid materials. Spaceports around the planet were packed with alien vessels, all waiting to trade for Earth's technology. Look there, Thompson pointed to a newly arrived ship. Even the Stellar Federation is sending representatives. They've always looked down on Earth as a backwater planet. Now they're practically begging for our atmospheric science expertise. Reed watched as more ships appeared through the station's jump gate. Each one represented a civilization that had previously ignored Earth, now eager to learn from the humans they had once dismissed as primitive. The new trade agreement is ready for signing, announced Dr. Peters, who had just arrived from Earth. She carried a tablet showing the final details. Equal exchange of technology and knowledge between all participating species. Earth's atmospheric science in exchange for advanced space travel technology. Reed reviewed the agreement with satisfaction. His people would share their faster-than-light technology, while Earth would teach them about atmospheric adaptation. Both civilizations would grow stronger together. The first production model of the new ship will be ready next week, Dr. Peters continued, showing them the blueprints. We're calling it the Bridge class, since it represents a bridge between our technologies and cultures. Speaking of bridges, Thompson added, Captain Reed, the Earth Space Defense Committee has a proposal for you. We'd like you to serve as our chief advisor for interstellar relations. Your experience with both technologies makes you uniquely qualified. Reed's antenna twitched in surprise and pleasure. I would be honored, Commander. Though I admit, it's ironic that losing my ship in such a spectacular way led to this opportunity. Sometimes the best discoveries come from our biggest mistakes, Dr. Peters said wisely. Your willingness to admit your error and learn from it impressed a lot of people, both human and alien. The three of them watched as construction continued on the prototype ship. Its design incorporated the best of both worlds, the advanced spacefaring capabilities of Reed's people and the environmental adaptation techniques of humanity. You know, Reed said thoughtfully, when I first came to Earth, I thought I was just making another trade run. Instead, I ended up being part of something revolutionary. Our civilizations needed each other. We just didn't know it until my ship melted. Thompson placed a friendly hand on Reed's shoulder. That's humanity's greatest strength, Captain. We don't just survive our harsh environment. We learn from it and share those lessons with others, even if they have to lose an unbreakable ship to understand. Reed's antenna lifted in amusement. As he watched more ships arrive through the jump gate, he knew that this was just the beginning. Earth's atmosphere had destroyed his mighty vessel, but in doing so, it had helped build something far greater, a bridge between stars and species, founded on mutual respect and shared knowledge. To the future, Reed said, raising a glass of earth water, still amazed that humans could drink something capable of dissolving advanced metals. To the future, Thompson and Dr. Peters echoed, their glasses clinking together as another wave of ships appeared, ready to learn Earth's lessons.